The day my parents tried to prove I was mentally unfit was the day I realized they never truly loved me, only what I had. My name is Lily Anderson. I'm 34 years old, and 3 months ago, I buried my husband. His name was Daniel. He wasn't just my husband. He was my best friend, my home, my safe place in a world that never felt fully secure until I met him. We didn't come from wealth. We didn't have powerful families or big inheritances waiting for us. We had each other. We started in a tiny apartment with thin walls and a secondhand couch that creaked every time we sat on it. We worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs each, building something brick by brick, and somehow, those were the happiest days of my life. Because everything we had, we earned together. Daniel was careful with money, but he wasn't cheap. He believed in security, in planning, in making sure that if anything ever happened, I would be okay. He used to joke about it sometimes. If anything happens to me, he would say with a half smile, I've got you covered. I always rolled my eyes and told him to stop talking like that. I never thought I'd have to live in a world where those words actually mattered. The night he died still feels unreal. It was a normal evening. Dinner together. A quiet movie. He complained about a slight pain in his chest, but we thought it was stress. He had been working long hours that week. Within hours, everything changed. The ambulance lights, the hospital hallway, doctors rushing, voices I couldn't understand. And then, silence. I remember standing in that cold hallway, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't even hold my phone. A doctor came out. He said words. Medical words? Careful words. But all I heard was the only thing that mattered. We did everything we could. My entire world ended in that sentence. The funeral passed like a blur. Black clothes, flowers I never noticed, voices offering sympathy that I couldn't process. I stood there like a shadow of myself while people moved around me. And my parents were there too, holding me, crying, telling everyone how much they loved me, how they would take care of their daughter. At that time, I believed them, because when your world collapses, you cling to whatever support you can find. 2 weeks after the funeral, I got a call from Daniel's lawyer. His voice was calm, professional, kind. He asked me to come in for a meeting to discuss Daniel's will. I didn't even know Daniel had finalized everything so carefully. But that was him, always thinking ahead, always protecting me even when he wasn't there anymore. The day I walked into that office, my chest felt tight. Grief sat on my shoulders like a weight I couldn't shake off. I sat across from the lawyer as he opened a file with my husband's name on it. Seeing Daniel's name printed on that paper made everything feel real in a way I wasn't ready for. The lawyer looked at me gently. Daniel loved you very much, he said, and he made sure you would be taken care of. Then he started explaining the details. The house was in my name. Daniel's share in his business transferred to me. Savings accounts, investments, life insurance, everything. Daniel had left me his entire estate. I remember blinking slowly, trying to process the number the lawyer mentioned. It didn't feel real. $4 million. $4 million. And the one person I wanted to share it with was gone. Tears filled my eyes, but they weren't tears of joy. They were tears of loss. Because money couldn't hug me at night. Money couldn't laugh with me in the kitchen. Money couldn't call me my love the way Daniel did. But the lawyer's final words stayed with me. Daniel trusted you, he said. He wanted you to be secure, to live the life you both dreamed of. I nodded slowly because I understood something in that moment. This wasn't just money. This was Daniel's final act of love. His last promise to protect me, and I had no idea that the people who were supposed to love me the most were already planning to take that away. When I left the lawyer's office that day, I sat in my car for a long time without turning the engine on. $4 million. It sounded like a number from someone else's life, not mine. The steering wheel felt cold under my fingers as I stared through the windshield, trying to understand what my life had just become. But the truth was simple. I wasn't thinking about money. I was thinking about Daniel. Every dollar he left behind felt like a memory of him. Every account, a reminder that he had been planning a future. I would now have to live without him. For the first few days, I told almost no one about the exact amount. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I needed space to breathe, to grieve, to exist without everyone suddenly seeing me as something different. At first, my parents were gentle. They called me every morning. They came over with food. They sat with me in silence when I didn't feel like talking. They told me I didn't have to go through anything alone. And for a while, I believed them. But slowly, something changed. It started with small questions that seemed harmless at first. How are the legal things going? Did Daniel have life insurance? Is everything transferred into your name yet? I answered politely. Short, simple answers. I told myself they were just concerned parents trying to understand my situation. But the questions didn't stop. They became more frequent, more detailed, more interested. One evening, my mother came over without calling first. She walked into the house slowly, her eyes moving across the living room like she was studying it. The furniture, the walls, the framed photos of me and Daniel. Her gaze lingered a little too long on everything. She sat down across from me and folded her hands. You shouldn't be handling all of this by yourself, she said softly. I forced a small smile. I'm not by myself. Daniel's lawyer is helping with everything. She shook her head gently. That's not what I mean. You've been through a traumatic loss. You're not in the right emotional state to make big financial decisions. Something about the way she said emotional state made my chest tighten. I'm grieving, I said calmly, but I'm still capable of making decisions. She didn't argue, but I could see it in her eyes. She didn't agree. 2 days later, my father called. His voice had that careful, controlled tone he used whenever he was about to say something serious. We've been talking, he said. Your mother and I are concerned about you. I'm fine, I replied quietly. You're not, he said immediately. You lost your husband. That kind of trauma affects judgment. My grip on the phone tightened. I'm grieving, not incapable. There was a short pause on the line. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. We think it might be best if we temporarily manage Daniel's estate for you. The words hit me like ice water. Manage it? I repeated slowly. Yes, he continued. Just until you're stable again. We can make sure everything is handled properly. That word again. Stable. Something inside me shifted in that moment. For the first time, their concern didn't feel like love. It felt like control. I don't need anyone to manage my finances, I said firmly. Daniel trusted me. I can handle it. My father sighed on the other end of the phone, the kind of sigh that carries judgment. We just don't want you making emotional decisions you'll regret. After I hung up, the silence in my house felt different. It no longer felt like a place of memories and comfort. It felt like a place someone was watching from the outside, waiting, calculating. Over the next week, their behavior became more intense. They started calling multiple times a day. They showed up unannounced. They asked for copies of legal documents, bank information, property papers. Each time I said no, their tone changed just a little more. Less gentle, less patient, more irritated, more forceful. One afternoon, my mother finally stopped pretending. She looked directly at me and said, "If you don't let us help you manage things, we may have to consider other options." My heart dropped. I stared at her. What do you mean? Other options. Her expression hardened. Legal options. The room went completely silent. Are you threatening me? I asked slowly. She leaned back slightly in her chair. I'm protecting you, she replied coldly. And in that moment, everything became clear. This was never about love, never about support, never about helping me heal. This was about money, about control, about the $4 million Daniel left behind, and my own parents who were willing to question my sanity to get it. The day I received the legal notice was the day my grief turned into something else, something colder, something sharper, something that finally made me see my parents for who they really were. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, a thick envelope, official, heavy, cold. My hands trembled as I opened it at the kitchen counter where Daniel and I used to have coffee together every morning. Inside were court documents, petition for guardianship, filed by my own parents. I read the words once, then again, then a third time, because my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. They were asking the court to declare me mentally unfit, to take control of my finances, my property, my entire life. Their claim? That I was emotionally unstable after my husband's death. that I was not capable of making sound financial decisions, that I needed responsible guardians to manage my estate. Responsible guardians. My parents. My chest felt tight as I sank into a chair. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Not from sadness anymore. From anger? Because this wasn't about helping me. This was about taking everything Daniel had left me. Everything he worked for. Everything he trusted me to protect. I didn't cry. Not this time. I was done crying. Instead, I picked up my phone and I called Daniel's lawyer. His voice changed the moment I told him what I had received. "What?" he said sharply. "They filed for guardianship over you?" "Yes," I whispered. "They're trying to say I'm mentally unfit." There was a pause. Then his tone became calm again, but firm. "Lily, listen to me carefully. This is serious, but it's not something they can just win easily. They need evidence." I swallowed. "They think they have it. Do they?" he asked. And that's when something clicked in my mind. Because suddenly, I remembered things. Little moments over the past week. Their words, their behavior, the pressure, the manipulation, and something else. Something they didn't know I had. Proof. You see, a few weeks earlier, something in me had already started to feel off. The way they asked questions, the way they pushed for control, the way they kept bringing up my mental state. So I started keeping records. At first, I told myself I was just being careful, just in case. I saved messages. I kept voicemails. And one evening, when my parents were in my living room talking about how I couldn't handle the estate on my own, I recorded the conversation. At the time, I didn't even know why I was doing it. Something in my gut just told me to. And now, sitting at my kitchen table with those court papers in front of me, I finally understood why. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't unstable. I wasn't incapable. I was being targeted by my own parents. That realization didn't break me. It hardened me because I knew something they didn't. They thought grief made me weak. They thought I would collapse under pressure. They thought I would give up control out of fear. But they forgot one thing. Daniel didn't just love me. He believed in me. He trusted me. He knew exactly who I was. And I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own parents, destroy what he left behind. I met with a lawyer that same afternoon. He went through the documents carefully, his expression serious. "This is aggressive," he said finally. "They're claiming you're emotionally unstable and financially irresponsible." I almost laughed. "Emotionally unstable because my husband died?" He nodded slowly. "They're trying to use your grief against you." I leaned forward. "They won't win." He looked at me carefully. "Do you have anything that shows their intent?" I reached into my bag, took out my phone, opened a folder, and pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room. Clear, cold, calculated. "If she won't give us control willingly, we'll get it legally." My father's voice followed. "She's too emotional right now. The court will see that." The room went silent when the recording ended. My lawyer looked at me. Then he gave a slow, impressed nod. "This," he said, "changes everything." For the first time since Daniel died, I felt something different inside me. Not grief, not pain, power. Because now, I wasn't just a widow trying to survive. I was a woman ready to fight back. And this time, I had the truth on my side. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just in temperature, but in feeling. I sat at the table beside my lawyer, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Across the room, my parents sat together, dressed perfectly, calm and composed as if they were the victims in all of this. As if I was the problem. I didn't look at them for long, because every time I did, my chest tightened with a mix of anger and disbelief. How did we get here? How did the people who raised me become the people trying to take everything from me? The judge entered. Everyone stood. And just like that, my life became a case number. My parents' lawyer spoke first. He stood confidently, his voice smooth and controlled as he painted a picture of me that I barely recognized. He described me as fragile, emotionally unstable, unable to handle pressure, overwhelmed by grief. He spoke about how I had isolated myself after my husband's death, how I had become withdrawn, how I was not in a condition to manage a multi-million-dollar estate responsibly. Every word felt like a knife. Because yes, I was grieving. Yes, I was broken for a while, but that didn't make me incapable. That made me human. Then my mother took the stand. She wiped fake tears from her eyes as she spoke. "We just want to protect our daughter," she said softly. She's not thinking clearly right now. We're afraid she'll lose everything. Lose everything? I almost laughed. They were the ones trying to take everything. My father followed. His voice was steady, controlled. We love our daughter, he said. We only want what's best for her. I stared down at my hands, because if I looked at him, I didn't trust myself to stay calm. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood, calm, focused, prepared. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get emotional. He simply presented facts. He showed the court the will. Clear, legal, detailed. Daniel had left everything to me, by choice, by trust. Then he showed financial records, all accounts in order. No reckless spending, no irresponsible behavior, no evidence of instability. Then he paused, looked at me once, and said, "Your Honor, we would like to present one more piece of evidence." My heart started beating faster because I knew what was coming. He pressed play. My mother's voice filled the courtroom. Clear, sharp, undeniable. If she won't give us control willingly, we'll get it legally. A wave of silence spread across the room. Then my father's voice. She's too emotional right now. The court will see that. No one moved. No one spoke. I finally looked up. My mother's face had gone pale. My father's jaw was tight. Their perfect image, cracked in front of everyone. My lawyer turned to the judge. "These recordings," he said calmly, "demonstrate that this petition is not about protection, but about control of my client's assets." The judge's expression changed. I saw it, that shift, that moment where everything turned. My parents' lawyer tried to object, tried to explain, tried to twist the meaning, but it was too late, because truth has a weight to it. And once it's heard, you can't unhear it. The judge asked me to stand. My legs felt slightly weak as I walked forward. But my voice was steady. "I lost my husband," I said quietly. "I'm grieving, but I am not incapable." I took a breath. I trusted my parents. I thought they were here to support me. Instead, they tried to take control of my life. The room was silent, listening, watching. "I'm not asking for sympathy," I continued. "I'm asking for my rights. The rights my husband trusted me with." I stepped back and sat down. The judge took a few moments, looking through the documents, listening to the silence. Then finally, he spoke. "This court finds no evidence that the petitioner's daughter is mentally unfit." My chest tightened. This petition is denied. A breath I didn't realize I was holding. Finally released. But the judge wasn't finished. He looked directly at my parents, his voice now colder, sharper. "And based on the evidence presented, the court finds this petition to be filed in bad faith." My parents' faces changed completely. Their control, their confidence, gone. "Any further attempts to harass or control the respondent's estate," the judge continued, "may result in legal consequences." The gavel came down. And just like that, it was over. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel victory. I felt free, because for the first time since Daniel died, I realized something important. I didn't lose my family that day. I discovered who they really were, and I finally chose myself. The courtroom doors closed behind me, and with them, a chapter of my life ended. I walked down the courthouse steps slowly, the sunlight hitting my face for the first time in what felt like weeks. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing, feeling, existing. Because for so long, I had been surviving. But now, I was finally living again. My phone buzzed in my hand. I didn't even need to check to know who it was. My parents, again. I stared at the screen, watched it ring, watched their names flash over and over. Then, I silenced it and slid the phone back into my bag. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. Not everyone who calls themselves family deserves access to your life. The next few days were quiet, peaceful, healing. I spent time in the house Daniel and I built together, but it felt different now. Not heavy, not painful, warm, safe. Mine. I went through old photos, old messages, old memories. I cried. Yes, but they were no longer tears of helplessness. They were tears of love, of gratitude, of remembering a man who truly loved me. Without conditions, Daniel didn't try to control me. He didn't doubt me. He didn't see me as weak. He saw me as his partner, his equal, his future. And that was the life I chose to honor. A week later, My parents showed up at my door. I saw them through the window before I opened it, standing there, not confident anymore, not proud, small, uneasy, nervous. I opened the door slowly. We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then my mother spoke first, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. We just wanted to talk. I didn't move, didn't step aside, didn't invite them in. There's nothing to talk about, I said calmly. My father stepped forward slightly. We made a mistake, he said. We were worried about you. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a child standing in front of her father. I felt like a woman standing in front of two strangers who had tried to take her life apart. You didn't worry about me, I said quietly. You worried about my money. They both went silent because they knew I knew the truth. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Please, she whispered. We're still your parents. I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. You are. Then I took a small step back,